My brother is dead because of the legacy you're celebrating tonight. The sentence cut through the ballroom as Ethan Caldwell raised his glass beneath a chandelier worth more than most families earned in a decade. 300 guests turned toward the woman near the back wall. Riley Bennett wore a plain navy dress among silk gowns and black ties, but every camera in the Grand Marlowe Hotel was suddenly pointed at her. Ethan lowered his glass without leaving the podium. At 39, he wore the calm of a man used to hostile takeovers and federal hearings. Tonight, Riley saw recognition move behind his eyes. "Miss Bennett," he said. The fact that he knew her name sent a murmur across the room. Riley tightened her grip on the leather folder under her arm. "So you do remember me." Margaret Caldwell, Ethan's mother and the chairwoman of Caldwell Industries, leaned toward security. Two officers started down the aisle. Ethan raised one hand. They stopped. "Let her speak," he said. Margaret's gaze snapped toward her son, but Ethan kept watching Riley. She stepped into the center aisle as phones began to record. Behind Ethan, a 30-foot screen displayed the gala's theme in gold letters. A legacy of responsibility. Riley had stared at those words for nearly an hour. Then Ethan praised the company's safety record and honored the people who had built Caldwell Industries with courage and trust. That was when she stood. 3 years ago, my brother Noah Bennett worked as a systems engineer at your manufacturing plant in Ohio. He filed repeated warnings about a failure in the emergency controls. He asked management to shut down the affected line until a full inspection could be completed. The room became quiet enough for Riley to hear the lights hum. 5 days later, there was an accident. Noah died. Caldwell Industries called it unforeseeable. Your lawyers called my brother careless. Your press office said there had been no credible warning. Riley opened the folder and removed a document. That was a lie. Margaret stood. This is neither the time nor the place for unverified accusations. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to ending conversations. Riley looked directly at her. This is exactly the place. You invited the press, the board, and every person whose money protects this company from consequences. Riley walked closer to the stage and held up the report she had received 48 hours earlier in an unmarked envelope. This safety analysis was completed 12 days before my brother died. It identifies the same failure he warned about. It recommends an immediate shutdown. And on the final page, there is an authorization showing that senior leadership reviewed it. She faced Ethan. Your name is at the bottom. Whispers spread across the ballroom. Someone asked whether the event was still broadcasting live. Margaret turned toward Samantha Reed, the company's general counsel. Cut the feed. Samantha hesitated. Riley saw it. So did Ethan. No, Ethan said. Margaret stared at him. Ethan. The feed stays on. Riley had imagined this moment every night since the envelope arrived. In most versions, security removed her. In others, Ethan denied everything while his lawyers destroyed her credibility before midnight. She had never imagined him protecting the broadcast. He stepped away from the podium and came down the short staircase. Up close, he looked less untouchable than he did on magazine covers. Where did you get that report? He asked. Does it matter? It matters if someone altered it. The signature is yours. That wasn't my question. Riley held his gaze. And Noah's death wasn't mine. But your company made it my family's problem. Ethan looked at the report, then at Samantha, and finally at his mother. He was measuring the room, every ally, every witness, every person who might know more than they admitted. Margaret approached them. This woman entered a private event under false pretenses. We will address any legitimate concern through proper channels. Riley gave a bitter laugh. Proper channels are where warnings go to disappear. Ethan's expression changed. Riley saw the quiet guilt of someone hearing words he had heard before. He returned to the podium and gathered his prepared remarks. The ballroom fell silent as he turned through the pages and removed the last one. Miss Bennett, he said, you interrupted me on page 12. Riley said nothing. Ethan walked back down and held out the page. Read page 13. Margaret's composure broke. Ethan, don't. He ignored her. Riley stared at the paper. What is this? The part of the speech the board asked me to remove. Riley understood then that the gala was not simply a celebration. It was a battlefield, and she had entered it carrying evidence for a war already in progress. Ethan extended the page again. "You came here to expose me," he said quietly. "Finish the speech." Riley took it. The paper trembled once between her fingers. Then she began reading aloud. The first line was not a denial. It announced an independent investigation into concealed safety reports, altered corporate records, and decisions made by members of Caldwell Industries' executive leadership. Her voice steadied as she continued. Then she reached the final paragraph. One name appeared in bold type. Noah Bennett. She looked up at Ethan. "Why is my brother's name in your speech?" His face revealed nothing, but his answer changed the room. "Because Noah contacted me before he died," he said. "And because I believe someone inside this company made sure his warning never reached the public." 48 hours earlier, Riley Bennett had been standing in the narrow kitchen of her apartment in Columbus when someone slid an envelope beneath her door. She heard the paper scrape across the hardwood, but by the time she reached the hallway, the stairwell was empty. No footsteps. No elevator bell. Nothing except the low hum of the building and the envelope resting beside her shoe. Her name was typed across the front. There was no return address. Inside, she found a cream-colored invitation to the Caldwell Industries anniversary gala, a temporary access card, and a copy of a safety report she had never seen before. Riley read the first page twice, then sat at her kitchen table and read every line again. The report had been completed 12 days before the accident at the Ohio plant. It warned that the emergency control system could fail under a specific sequence of electrical faults. Noah had described the same risk in the notes found on his personal computer after his death. For 3 years, Caldwell Industries had insisted that no formal warning existed. Yet here it was, complete with dates, technical findings, and an executive review record bearing Ethan Caldwell's authorization. A single note had been placed beneath the final page. Ethan Caldwell knew what happened to Noah. Riley photographed every document, stored the images in 3 separate locations, and called the only person she still trusted from the investigation. Daniel Price had covered corporate accountability for a local newspaper before budget cuts forced him into freelance work. He arrived 30 minutes later carrying a laptop and 2 cups of coffee. He examined the paper, the printing marks, and the access card. "This could be real," he said. "It could also be bait." "Bait for what?" "To make you accuse the most powerful person in the company before you can verify the source." Riley looked at Ethan's name again. The company had 3 years to tell the truth. "That does not mean whoever sent this is on your side." Daniel searched public filing databases while Riley compared the report with Noah's notes. The technical language matched phrases Noah had used in messages to management. Several sections had been copied into his personal records almost word for word, suggesting that he had seen an earlier version. But one detail troubled her. The report listed a digital review time of 9:14 p.m. on a Sunday. Ethan Caldwell had been photographed at a charity event in New York that evening. He could still have approved the document remotely, but the timing felt deliberate, almost too convenient. Daniel leaned back from the computer. "The gala is being broadcast online. Investors, reporters, board members, everyone will be watching." Riley studied the invitation. "Then they cannot bury it in a private meeting. They can bury you instead. They already buried Noah's reputation." Daniel did not argue. Before he left, he warned her not to trust the access card until she understood who had issued it. Riley spent the night comparing the card with security procedures Noah had saved during his employment. Its credential prefix matched temporary passes sponsored through the legal department, but the individual sponsor field had been removed. At dawn, she drove to the coffee shop across from Caldwell Industries headquarters and watched employees enter the 42-story glass building. At 8:05 a.m., Ethan Caldwell arrived alone. No driver. No visible security detail. He paused near the entrance when a television in the lobby displayed a financial report about a possible leadership change at the company. Riley could not hear the broadcast, but she saw his expression harden before he continued inside. On the 37th floor, Ethan entered a board strategy meeting that had not appeared on his official calendar. Margaret Caldwell sat at the head of the table with 6 directors and Samantha Reed, the company's general counsel. A printed copy of Ethan's gala speech rested before each person. Margaret tapped the final page. This section is removed. Ethan remained standing. The investigation is not optional. Publicly announcing it tonight would destroy confidence before we know the scope. We know enough to begin. One director cleared his throat. There is also concern about your judgment. Ethan looked around the table and understood that the meeting was not about the speech. The board had already prepared a vote. Margaret spoke with practiced calm. If the gala becomes unstable, the board will need temporary leadership by morning. You mean leadership you control? I mean leadership that protects the company. Ethan opened his copy of the speech and marked the removed page with a small fold at the corner. If protecting the company requires concealing evidence, then the company does not deserve protection. Margaret's expression did not change. Your father built this institution. No. Thousands of employees built it. Our name is merely on the building. Samantha watched Ethan leave, then closed the folder in front of her. Margaret waited until the door shut. Has the Bennett woman made contact? Samantha's pause lasted less than a second. Not with me. By late afternoon, Riley had confirmed that the gala invitation was valid. The legal department had issued it 2 days earlier under the name of an outside consultant. She entered the Grand Marlowe Hotel through the main lobby, expecting someone to stop her. No one did. The access card opened the security checkpoint without delay. Inside the ballroom, she chose a place near the back and watched board members greet one another beneath the chandeliers. Ethan arrived at 7 o'clock. Margaret took his arm for the cameras, but Riley noticed that they never once looked at each other. Samantha entered moments later. She crossed the room, saw Riley, and nearly stopped walking. The reaction was brief, but it was enough. Riley now knew the general counsel recognized her. She also knew the envelope had not come from a stranger. As the program began, Samantha approached the control booth and handed a technician a sealed instruction. Then she returned to her table and placed her phone face down. Riley felt the report inside her folder and realized Daniel had been right. Someone wanted her on that stage. The question was whether they wanted the truth exposed or merely wanted Ethan Caldwell destroyed. When Ethan stepped to the podium and began speaking about responsibility, Riley watched Samantha instead of him. The attorney did not look surprised when Riley rose from her chair. She looked relieved. At that moment, Riley knew only one thing for certain. The woman standing closest to Ethan Caldwell had opened the door for the person who came to expose him. Riley kept her eyes on Ethan, but the ballroom had become a field of competing reactions. Reporters were already typing. Board members whispered behind raised hands. Margaret Caldwell stood near the stage with the stillness of someone refusing to show alarm in public. Samantha Reed remained at her table, watching Riley with an expression that looked less like fear than expectation. Riley lifted the final page. This speech says Noah contacted you before he died. Ethan did not look away. He did. When? 8 days before the accident. A ripple passed through the room. Riley felt her anger sharpen into something colder. My family spent 3 years asking whether anyone in senior leadership had received his warnings. I know. Your company said no. The company lied. Margaret stepped forward. Ethan, this is not the proper setting for privileged information. He turned toward her. There has never been a proper setting. That is why we are here. Riley looked down at the page again. The paragraph named Noah as a systems engineer who had raised concerns about emergency controls and record-keeping failures. It also stated that Caldwell Industries would open its internal archives to an independent review. The words sounded honest, but honesty written for a gala was still a performance. You expect everyone to believe this was your plan? Riley asked. You were going to stand here, admit the company concealed reports, and then continue serving dinner? Ethan glanced toward the untouched tables. Dinner was never the important part of tonight. It was important enough to spend $2 million on. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Ethan accepted the criticism without defending himself. You are right. Riley turned toward the cameras. Then let us be clear. This page does not prove that Ethan Caldwell is innocent. It proves that he knew my brother's name and remained silent for 3 years. Ethan took a slow breath. Yes. Margaret moved closer to the podium. The company has not verified the authenticity of the document Ms. Bennett presented. Then verify it now, Riley said. Samantha rose from her chair. The document appears to match a report held in the legal archive. Margaret stared at her. Appears. Samantha's voice stayed even. I will not call it false when I know it may be genuine. The room erupted again. Ethan raised the microphone. Every executive record connected to the Ohio plant will be preserved. No document will be deleted, altered, or removed. An outside firm will begin reviewing the files tomorrow morning. A board member near the front stood. You do not have authority to announce that without approval. Ethan looked directly at him. As Chief Executive Officer, I have the authority to order an internal preservation notice. If the board wishes to challenge me, it can do so on the record. Riley heard the calculation beneath his calm. He was forcing every objection into public view. Yet that did not answer the question that mattered. Why did Noah contact you? She asked. Ethan looked toward the cameras, then back at her. Not here. You wanted me to finish the speech. And you did. Then finish the truth. For the first time, his composure showed a fracture. It was brief, but Riley recognized it. Guilt did not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looked like a man choosing each word because one careless sentence could expose the life he had built. Noah believed the safety report was only one part of a larger problem, Ethan said. He believed records were being changed before they reached regulators, and that members of senior management were protecting one another. Did you believe him? Not completely. That is not an answer. I believed enough to ask for more evidence. Riley felt the room fall away around her. And while he gathered it, the accident happened. Ethan did not respond. He did not need to. The silence confirmed more than a denial would have. Riley lowered the page. You had a warning. I had an allegation and an incomplete file. You had my brother. Ethan's face tightened. Yes. The word was nearly lost beneath the sound of cameras. Riley wanted to leave before the company turned her grief into another public relations event. But Ethan spoke before she could step away. Give me 72 hours. She almost laughed. For what? To open the records Noah was trying to reach. You have had 3 years. For 3 years, I believed the Ohio investigation was complete. 2 weeks ago, I found evidence that files had been removed from the executive archive. Tonight, the board planned to remove me before I could announce an independent review. Margaret's voice cut across the stage. That is a reckless distortion. Ethan faced her. Then released the full board minutes. Margaret said nothing. Riley looked from mother to son and understood that their conflict had begun long before she entered the ballroom. Still, corporate warfare did not make Ethan trustworthy. It only meant that powerful people were fighting over which version of the truth would survive. Why should I help you? Riley asked. Because someone sent you a report that had been hidden for 3 years. Someone gave you legal access to this event. Someone wanted you to expose me at the exact moment the board was prepared to replace me. Riley glanced toward Samantha. The attorney's face revealed nothing now. You think I was used. I think we both were. That does not make us allies. No, Ethan said. The evidence might. Reporters called out questions, but he ignored them. Come to the Caldwell archive tomorrow morning. Bring Daniel Price and have counsel review the access terms if you wish. I can authorize a supervised examination of the Ohio records, including executive communications connected to the plant. Margaret stepped onto the stage. You cannot offer unrestricted access to confidential files. Ethan turned to Samantha. Can I authorize a supervised review? Samantha held his gaze. Yes. Margaret's expression hardened. Riley folded the final page and handed it back. I have one condition. Ethan waited. I decide what I believe. If I find evidence that you caused this, concealed it, or benefited from the cover-up, I will take it to investigators and make public anything I can lawfully disclose. Understood. That includes anything about your mother, your board, or you. Especially me. Riley studied him, searching for hesitation. There was none. That did not mean he was honest. It meant he had already decided the risk was worth taking. 72 hours, she said. After that I speak. Ethan nodded. After that you speak. Samantha crossed the ballroom and handed Riley a business card with a time written on the back. 7 a.m. Riley looked at her. Did you send the envelope? Samantha answered quietly. Tomorrow you should ask a better question. What question? Samantha glanced toward Margaret. Ask why Noah's report was not the first one to disappear. At 7 o'clock the next morning, Riley entered Caldwell Industries headquarters with Daniel Price beside her and a folder containing copies of every document she had received. The glass lobby looked different without gala lights and music. Employees crossed the polished floor carrying coffee, laptops, and the careful expressions of people who already knew their company had become the morning's biggest story. Screens above the security desk showed Ethan Caldwell standing beside Riley at the podium. The captions called it a corporate crisis. Riley called it 3 years late. Samantha Reed met them near the elevators. She wore the same gray suit from the night before, and the shadows beneath her eyes suggested she had never gone home. Before admitting them, she required both visitors to sign a limited access agreement and an evidence preservation log. Your access is limited to records connected to the Ohio plant, she said. All activity will be recorded. Daniel held up his camera bag. We will document every page we are permitted to review. That is allowed unless a file contains protected personal information or privileged legal advice. Riley studied Samantha. You still have not answered my question. I know. Did you send the envelope? Samantha pressed the elevator button. I authorized the access card. That was not the question. It is the answer I can give you right now. The elevator carried them below the lobby instead of above it. The digital display passed the first floor and stopped on the third basement level. When the doors opened, Riley found a corridor lined with climate-controlled storage rooms and locked steel cabinets. Ethan waited at the far end without an assistant or security detail. His jacket was draped over a chair. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and several open boxes covered the conference table. The digital archive cannot be trusted, he said. We are starting with paper. Riley placed her folder on the table. You said Noah believed records were being changed. He believed inspection findings were revised before submission. By whom? That is what we need to establish. Daniel began photographing the room and the labels on each box. Ethan did not object. Samantha unlocked a cabinet marked Ohio Operations and removed a logbook. Several entries had been crossed out, and others had no employee initials. Riley ran her finger down the dates. These boxes were moved 3 weeks after the accident. Ethan nodded. To executive storage. On whose order? Samantha turned to a second page. The authorization field was blank. Daniel looked at Ethan. That seems convenient. It is, Ethan said. For someone. They worked through the morning, comparing maintenance records, legal summaries, and board communications. The pattern was not hidden in one dramatic document. It was scattered across small changes. A recommendation for immediate shutdown became a recommendation for continued observation. A reference to repeated failures became an isolated irregularity. A request for outside review disappeared entirely from the final file. Each revision made the risk sound smaller, less urgent, and easier to postpone. Riley felt the shape of the deception forming around her. It did not look like one person inventing a lie. It looked like dozens of people making tiny decisions that protected the person above them. This is how it happened, she said. No one had to write "ignore the danger." They just softened every sentence until the danger disappeared. Ethan closed the file in front of him. That is how institutions teach people to lie, while still believing they are being professional. Riley looked at him. You speak from experience. He accepted the accusation without protest. Yes. Before she could press further, Daniel found a reference to an earlier safety review from 5 years before Noah's death. The report number did not appear in the archive index. Samantha searched the legal database and found only a deletion notice signed by a former compliance officer. What happened to him? Riley asked. He resigned, Samantha said. 6 months after the report was removed. And the report? Gone. Riley remembered Samantha's warning from the gala. Noah's report had not been the first to disappear. By early afternoon, they had identified 4 missing reviews from 3 Caldwell facilities. Each one involved different equipment, different managers, and the same chain of executive approval. At the top of that chain sat a committee chaired by Margaret Caldwell. Ethan stared at the signatures in silence. Riley expected anger or denial. Instead, he looked tired. "You did not." "No?" she asked. "I knew the committee handled operational risk." "That is not what I asked." "No. I did not know reports were being removed." "But you never checked." Ethan met her gaze. No, the honesty unsettled her more than a polished defense would have. It left no easy villainy to reject, only the harder truth that powerful people often cause damage by trusting systems designed to protect them from uncomfortable facts. Samantha opened the final box. Inside were outdated storage drives, meeting notes, and a small digital recorder sealed in an evidence bag. Riley recognized Noah's handwriting on the label. Systems Review Private Copy. Her breath caught. Where was this found? In a locked desk after the accident, Samantha said. It was transferred to legal and never entered into the formal case file. Riley turned toward Ethan. Did you know it existed? No. Daniel examined the seal. Can we play it? Samantha looked at Ethan. He answered without hesitation. Yes. A forensic technician copied the files to a secure laptop while preserving the original recorder and documenting each step. The first files contained routine engineering meetings. Noah's voice filled the room, calm and precise, discussing maintenance schedules and testing procedures. Riley had not heard him speak in 3 years. For a moment the archive, the scandal, and the people around her faded. She remembered Sunday phone calls and his habit of explaining complicated problems with ordinary examples. The file metadata placed the next recording 6 days before the accident. Noah was speaking to someone in a private office. I sent the report through the official system, he said. The language was changed before it reached the committee. A man answered. Do you have proof? Riley looked at Ethan. He had gone completely still. The voice belonged to him. Noah continued. I have earlier drafts, internal messages, and the test results. I need access to the executive archive to connect them. Ethan's recorded voice remained controlled. Give me 1 week. The line should be shut down now. If I order a shutdown without complete evidence, the board will reverse it and remove everyone helping us. Then make the evidence complete today. There was a pause. When Noah spoke again, his voice had lost its patience. You keep talking as though the danger is political, Ethan said. The company employs 12,000 people. A careless decision affects all of them. And a delayed decision affects the people standing closest to the problem. The recording ended with the sound of a door closing. Riley turned toward Ethan. You asked him to wait. Ethan did not deny it. Samantha quietly stepped away from the table. Daniel lowered his camera. Riley pressed play on the next file. Noah's voice returned, softer now, recorded alone. If Ethan Caldwell keeps waiting for permission to do the right thing, the next accident will not be an accident. It will be a choice. Riley stopped the recording, but Noah's final sentence remained in the room like a judgment no one could appeal. Ethan stood on the opposite side of the table, one hand resting against the back of a chair. He did not look toward Samantha or Daniel. He looked only at Riley. Tell me what happened after that meeting, she said. All of it. Ethan drew a slow breath. The company was 6 weeks away from violating its debt agreements. If the Ohio plant closed without a documented emergency, the board believed our lenders would withdraw support. Thousands of jobs were at risk. Riley stared at him. Noah warned you that people were at risk. I know. But the number on a financial report frightened you more. At the time I believed I could protect both. You believed you could delay one danger while solving another. Ethan said nothing. Riley understood that silence as an answer. Daniel moved closer to the laptop. Did you order the line to remain open? I authorized a 48-hour internal review before making a final decision. When operations claimed the testing was incomplete, I allowed the review to continue through the following Monday. Riley felt her throat tighten. Noah gave you the evidence. He gave me part of it. I asked operations to conduct an immediate inspection. An inspection controlled by the same people he suspected. I did not understand how far the record manipulation went. You understood enough to ask him for more proof. Ethan's expression changed, not into anger, but into the exhaustion of a man who had repeated these arguments to himself for years. I thought I had time. Riley folded her arms. That is what powerful people always think. Time belongs to them, so they assume it belongs to everyone else. Samantha lowered her eyes. Daniel watched without interrupting. Ethan walked to a locked cabinet and removed a thin folder. The morning after Noah met with me, I received a financial forecast from my mother's office. It projected that a shutdown could trigger layoffs across 4 states. She told me the board would reverse any order I issued unless the evidence was absolute. And you listened to her. Yes. Because she was chairwoman? Because she had saved the company once before, and I trusted her judgment. Riley shook her head. No. You trusted the version of the truth that allowed you to remain the person who saved everyone. Ethan accepted the words without protest. That may be true. He opened the folder and placed a memorandum on the table. It showed his authorization for the review and a recommendation that the Ohio line continue operating under temporary monitoring. Riley read the date twice. The authorization had been issued 5 days before the accident. You signed this? Yes. Then your name on the report was not forged. The digital review record may have been altered, but this decision was mine. Daniel photographed the memorandum. Riley looked at Ethan again. The man before her was not the simple villain she had imagined for 3 years. That did not make the truth easier. It made it worse. He had not ignored Noah because he was cruel. He had delayed because he believed the consequences of acting were too large. He had measured human risk against corporate survival and convinced himself that caution was wisdom. Did Noah know? She asked. He knew I had not ordered the shutdown. Did you speak to him again? Ethan's voice became quieter. I called him the day before the accident. He did not answer. I left a message saying I was arranging an outside inspection. Riley looked toward the recorder. Was the inspection scheduled? For the following Monday. Too late. Yes. The word carried no defense. Riley closed the folder. You stood at the gala and let everyone think you were exposing a conspiracy against you. There is a conspiracy. That does not erase your choice. I did not say it did. You let me believe you might have been framed. Some records were altered. My signature was added to documents I never reviewed. But the decision to delay was real. Riley stepped back from the table. You should have told me that on the stage. I should have. Why did you not? Ethan glanced at the archive doors. Because once I admitted it publicly, the board would have removed me before these records could be secured. Riley gave a humorless laugh. So you delayed the truth for strategic reasons. Ethan looked at her, and the parallel settled between them. Yes. She picked up her folder. You learned nothing. Riley. Do not use my name as though that makes this personal for you. It is personal. For me it is my brother. For you it is a failure in leadership. Ethan's face tightened. Noah was not a failure in leadership. No. He was the person who understood the danger while you debated the cost of believing him. She turned toward Daniel. Copy every file we are legally allowed to take. Samantha moved to block the cabinet, then stopped herself. You have supervised access, not unrestricted removal. Then supervise it, Riley said. Because in less than 48 hours, I am making all of this public. Ethan stepped closer, leaving several feet between them. If you release the memorandum without the missing reports, Margaret will place the entire decision on me and keep control of the board. Maybe the decision belongs on you. Part of it does. Then carry it. Riley expected him to argue. Instead he nodded. I will. That answer unsettled her again, but she refused to let remorse become another form of persuasion. Ethan continued. Before you leave, there is something else you need to know. Samantha sent the envelope under my authorization. Riley turned toward the attorney. Samantha met her gaze. He told me to find someone outside the company who would not protect him. You chose me because of Noah. Yes. Riley looked back at Ethan. You invited me here to destroy you? I invited you to expose the records. What happens to me is part of the consequence. Riley wanted to believe that was courage. She feared it was simply another decision he controlled. You do not get to design your own accountability, she said. I know. No, you know how to create the appearance of surrender while deciding where everyone stands. She walked toward the archive door. Our agreement is over. Riley, Margaret will contact you. Why? Because she will understand that you no longer trust me, and she will try to turn that into an advantage. Then she will be disappointed. Ethan's voice followed her into the corridor. My mother does not need your trust. She only needs your anger. Riley left the building with Daniel shortly after noon. Reporters crowded the sidewalk, but she refused every question. By the time she reached her apartment, a black sedan was parked across the street. Its driver handed her a card bearing the address of a private lounge 3 blocks away. Margaret Caldwell waited there beside a window with 2 cups of untouched coffee. On the table between them lay another folder. My son has spent his life believing confession is the same as courage, Margaret said. It is not. Riley remained standing. Why am I here? Margaret opened the folder and turned the first document toward her. It was Ethan's authorization to keep the Ohio line operating, followed by internal messages showing he had been warned the temporary monitoring plan might fail. This is enough to remove him, expose the truth about your brother, and force the company to compensate every affected family, Margaret said. What do you want in return? Only accuracy. Riley looked at her. That is not an answer. Margaret's smile was calm and empty. Then let me be direct. Help me make Ethan the final person responsible, and Caldwell Industries will restore Noah Bennett's name before the end of the week. Riley took out her phone. I am photographing every page. Margaret leaned back. Please do. I want you to understand exactly what he chose. Margaret Caldwell left the folder open between them as though the papers had already decided the future. Riley read the messages, the warnings, and Ethan's authorization, then closed it. You are offering me a clean villain, she said. Margaret lifted her coffee. I am offering you the person who made the decision. You chaired the committee that removed the reports. That has not been proven. Not yet. Margaret's expression cooled. Anger can make people mistake suspicion for evidence. Riley looked toward the reporters across the street. And power can make people mistake silence for innocence. She left without taking the folder, but the photographs on her phone preserved every page. Over the next 36 hours, Riley, Daniel, and Samantha compared the board records with the archive files. Samantha finally released legal routing logs she had protected for years. She admitted that she had preserved them because she feared they would be destroyed, but that fear had also become her excuse for waiting too long. They showed that Noah's report had reached Margaret's committee, where its language was revised, its urgency reduced, and its attachments removed. Ethan had chosen to delay the shutdown, but Margaret and 2 directors had made certain that he never saw the full history of earlier warnings. The truth did not divide itself into heroes and villains. It spread responsibility across everyone who had chosen convenience, loyalty, or reputation over the people asking to be heard. Under pressure from investors, employees, and state investigators, Caldwell Industries scheduled a public evidentiary session before the board's closed executive vote. Samantha formally listed Riley and Daniel as witnesses, while independent outside counsel reviewed the records cleared for disclosure. Margaret expected Ethan to accept full responsibility and resign. He arrived carrying no speech. Margaret opened with a declaration about stability, accountability, and protecting 12,000 employees from uncertainty. Then she presented Ethan's authorization and called it the final cause of the Ohio failure. Ethan did not interrupt. When she finished, he stood. The authorization was mine. I delayed the shutdown because I believed I was protecting the company while a review was completed. That decision was wrong, and I will accept the consequences. Margaret nodded. For the sake of the company, I move that Ethan Caldwell be removed immediately. Before Margaret could end the public session, the rear doors opened. Riley entered with Daniel and Samantha beside her. Margaret remained composed. Her testimony was scheduled for later. Samantha placed certified records on the table. The witness order was amended under the authority of outside counsel. Riley walked to the witness podium near the cameras. She had been granted access to the room, but no one had scripted what she would say. Ethan Caldwell made a decision that should never be excused, she said. He had a warning and he chose delay. My brother understood the risk more clearly than the people with authority to act. Ethan must answer for that. Margaret allowed herself the smallest smile. Riley continued. But accountability is not a performance in which one person carries every failure so everyone else can remain in power. Samantha distributed the routing logs while Daniel sent copies to reporters watching the live feed. Riley explained how Margaret's committee had removed earlier reports, changed recommendations, and pressured legal staff to protect the board from scrutiny. She named the directors who approved the revisions. She also presented messages showing that Margaret had warned Ethan the board would reverse a shutdown unless the evidence met a standard the committee itself had made impossible to reach. Margaret stood. These documents are incomplete and privileged. Riley did not look away. Independent counsel has identified the copies before this board as business records, not privileged legal advice. Their authenticity can be tested in the investigation. She turned toward the cameras. Noah Bennett did not fail this company. This company failed him. Ethan Caldwell failed him when he waited. Margaret Caldwell failed him when she buried the warnings. The board failed him when it treated human risk as a public relations problem. No one spoke. Then Samantha requested an outside investigation and the immediate suspension of Margaret and the directors named in the records. Ethan publicly supported the motion, recused himself from the board's deliberations, and resigned as chief executive officer. Margaret looked at her son. You are giving away your father's legacy. Ethan met her gaze. No. I am ending the part of it that should never have survived. After a closed executive session, the independent directors announced that the motion had passed. In the weeks that followed, the company created an independently administered compensation fund, reopened every disputed safety review, and formally cleared Noah's professional record. Ethan testified publicly and agreed never again to hold an executive position at Caldwell Industries. Samantha resigned as general counsel after turning over the remaining records. Margaret and the implicated directors were suspended, then removed after the independent review confirmed the routing logs and altered reports. 1 year later, Riley opened the Noah Bennett Center for Corporate Accountability in a renovated brick building outside Columbus. The center offered legal support to employees who reported safety concerns and trained small companies to create reporting systems that could not be quietly rewritten. At the opening, Riley spoke without notes. She did not call Noah a symbol. She called him her brother, a patient engineer who believed facts mattered, even when powerful people found them inconvenient. After the guests left, Ethan appeared near the front door carrying 2 cups of coffee. He wore no suit, no company pin, and no expression that asked to be forgiven. I thought you might still be here, he said. Riley glanced at the cups. You remembered how I take it. Daniel told me. That sounds more believable. Ethan smiled, then looked toward the plaque bearing Noah's name. I do not expect this place to change what I did. It does not. I know. He held out 1 cup. Riley accepted it but did not move aside. What do you want, Ethan? Nothing from you. I wanted to see what happened after someone finally told the whole truth. Riley studied him. The truth did not save anyone. No. But it stopped the lie from choosing what came next. She opened the door wider. You can stay for 1 cup. Ethan stepped inside. There were no cameras, no board members, and no stage between them. For the first time, neither of them needed the other to finish a speech.